Now? Good afternoon, everyone. We are beginning our House Appropriations Committee Transportation and Environment Subcommittee budget hearing today. We have two agencies that we're going to hear from. The first is the Department of Agriculture, and the second is Canal Place Preservation and Development Authority. We'll begin today with the Department of Agriculture, and we'll have Mr. Andrew Gray provide the budget analysis to us, and then we'll ask Secretary Addix to come forward with his people, and we will go from there.
Madam Chair, I'll now present the Maryland Department of Agriculture's fiscal 2027 budget analysis. Page 1, you see there the budget increases $2.6 million, or 2.1%, to $124.7 million. On page 2, brief discussion there about federal rescissions. There were two federal rescissions that kind of impacted MDA's budget, although the funding, the first rescission was pass-through funding. This is the Local Food Purchase Assistance 2025 agreement funding. So it was a $4.9 million reduction. That funding goes to food banks to purchase food from Maryland farmers. There was also a rescission of $180,000 for spongy moth suppression work. That funding was provided in terms of funding from the contingent fund, $135,000. And there was also funding from the Department of Natural Resources and local governments to backfill. The proposed efficiencies on page 2 as well. For fiscal 2026, there's a personnel deficiency totaling $500,000 in general funds, which include shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings. There's also a $55,000 general fund deficiency in the turf and seed program to replace the vent hood system in the seed testing laboratory. On page 3, you see the big picture there in terms of the overview of the agency's spending for fiscal 2027. About half the agency's spending is in the Office of Resource Conservation, a quarter in the Office of Marketing, Animal Industries, and Consumer Services, and then the other two main components there, Office of Plant Industries and Pest Management and Office of the Secretary, consist of the other quarter. In terms of the proposed budget changes, on page 5, see salary adjustments, $2.3 million increase, $2.3 million increase as well for employee and retiree health insurance funding. Under the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bay's 2010 Trust Fund funding, so you have $1.3 million increase for conservation incentive grants reimbursable funding and a $2.4 million cover crop program funding reduction. We'll talk a little bit more about that as an issue in this analysis. In terms of agricultural policies, around $1.2 million increase for the food bank funding to purchase invasive blue catfish. And this is counterbalanced by a $2 million decrease for the local food purchase agreement funding in fiscal 2027, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Moving now to the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provisions on the bottom of page 6. There are 4 provisions here, 3 provisions, excuse me. The first one is the Maryland Native Plants Program. The funding mandate is being repealed, and that would mean $150,000 from the University of Maryland Extension to hire 1 extension agent, and $100,000 for MDA to hire 1 staff to administer the Maryland Native Plants Program would no longer be mandated, and there's a $100,000 reduction in MDA's budget for that purpose in fiscal 2027. The second one is for the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland. That funding decreases by $300,000 in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act provision. That's cigarette restitution fund funding. And so that would rebase the mandate at $700,000 going forward. Then there's the Maryland Healthy Soils Program. Mandate is being reduced in terms of how much the governor has to put in for that program from $500,000 to $400,000 for fiscal 2027 through fiscal 2028, which is actually the end of the mandated period funding for that program. And the fourth and final mandate change in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act for the Urban Agriculture, Water, and Power Grant Program Fund. That's reduced by $100,000 in fiscal 2027 only. In terms of personnel data, you see there's 8 regular position increase for fiscal 2027 in MDA's budget, and 7 contractual FTEs decrease. And that's basically the counterbalancing. The 7 contractual FTEs are being converted into regular long-term positions. And then there's 1 new position that will assess the existing procurement officer to address some procurement needs mentioned in audit findings in Appendix 2. Moving now to page 10, it's the first issue. This one concerns the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming Program, or LEAF. So let's just discuss briefly the Chesapeake Bay overview analysis. There was $100,000 restricted for the purpose of pending the submission of a report on this particular program in the fiscal 2026 budget. The report was submitted. It was submitted a little bit late, but it was submitted. Some of the concerns, though, we have about the report was that the program's final parameters were not laid out in the report. There was no detailed spending plan as requested, and there's really a lot riding on the advisory committee feedback that needs to be, the advisory committee has to actually be set up. Therefore, it doesn't look like the program's really ready for that prime time funding of $900,000 in fiscal 2027. So there's two recommendations on page 10, or 11, excuse me. First is to reduce the appropriation from $900,000 to $500,000 to level fund the program in fiscal 2027, and also to release the $100,000 that are restricted pending the submission of the report, because the report has been submitted. Second issue concerns the cover crop program. So wildly successful banner year in fiscal 2025, but as a result, there looks like the agency has overspent its funding or appropriation for that particular program, or internally has taken on more obligations that it could fund in a particular fiscal year, basically. And it could address that by using some of the reserve funding from the Bay Restoration Fund, and also from some of the federal money from the EPA's Chesapeake Bay Regulatory and Accountability Program funding, as well as shifting out some of the contract payments, it looks, into fiscal 2026. So that's obviously not a sustainable thing to do kind of year in, year out, certainly because the crop year 2025-2026 interest level also seems very high, and therefore this is a concern going forward that we need to make sure we have a stable funding source and stable funding amount, and kind of right-size the program based on the funding that's available. And then, as noted previously in the budget, there's a $2.4 million reimbursable fund decrease from the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund, which does not seem really opportune relative to all the interest and the potential for overspending the appropriation. DLS recommends the MDA comment on how much was actually spent on fiscal 2025 cover crop payments, how this compares to the initial cover crop program appropriation, the timing of payments, and also the comment about kind of fiscal 2026 in terms of the interest level there and how that's going to be funded based on the reduction of the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund funding. The third issue concerns old audit findings not being resolved. So the audits in Appendix 2 or 3 of this analysis, the findings noted here are two older findings. So the first finding concerns the state chemist program and the product registrations by that program. And findings about this have gone back to calendar 2013, so quite a few years ago. The second finding regarding equipment is in terms of the physical inventories of sensitive equipment, basically. And that finding has been going back to 1990. So on the page 13, DLS recommends that $100,000 of MDA's general fund appropriation be restricted until MDA submits a report in coordination with the Department of General Services on the resolution of findings 3 and 4 of the March 2025 audit. And the report to be submitted by July 1, 2026. So if everything's copacetic, the report is submitted, and the money is released. And if there are additional needs, then the money would obviously be restricted until those needs are resolved. The fourth issue concerns the electric vehicle charger registration process. So in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2025, this Weights and Measures program was authorized to set its own fees, which it did. And one of the new fees it set was for electric vehicle service equipment chargers, the fee of $150 per port. And then there was a requirement for everybody to register by January 1, 2026, in terms of their electric vehicle service chargers. So there was some pushback about that requirement. The deadline has been extended to July 1, 2026. However, the need for the funding in the Weights and Measures program persists. Obviously, they're going to do this work. They need to be able to fund it in terms of going out and inspecting all the different chargers and making sure they're both reliable and then also accurate. And there's also the issue of purchasing a very expensive vehicle in the fiscal 2027 budget is a $454,000 special truck used for weights and measures, and they'll tell you all about it. It's very interesting. It's very, very heavy, apparently the heaviest thing on the roads. DLS recommends the MDA comment on the overall plan for the rollout of those charger inspections and registrations, and how that would impact the weights and measures for programs funding. This final issue concerns two reports that were not submitted in a timely manner. The first one is discussed in the MDE analysis as well. The Enforcement and Inspection Position Strength in Maryland Poultry Registration Program reports, two reports there. Noted in terms of what's actually in the reports, but DLS does recommend on page 16 for MDA to comment on why they were submitted late. On page 17, the two actions there to reduce the general funds by $400,000 to level fund the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming program due to the fact that it's not look like it's ready for prime time. And then the $100,000 restriction until the resolution of those audit findings by a report submitted by July 1, 2026. So unless there are any questions, that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. That was a very succinct summary, given how many pages this analysis was. So we appreciate you doing that. And Secretary Addix, would you and your team like to come forward?
Thank you.
Let me give you the floor.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair Watson, members of the committee. For the record, Kevin Addix, Secretary at the Maryland Department of Agriculture, joined up here by Heather Barthel, who is our Assistant Secretary for Administration. At our department, we also have the assistant secretaries from each of our other units here, as well as questions may arise. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the budget. And thank you to analyst Andrew Gray for the detailed analysis. We appreciate that and do appreciate the summary as well. But we appreciated the lengthy version as well. There are obviously some things that shed some light on what's happening within the Maryland Department of Agriculture, some of the challenges, and of course some of the opportunities. You have in front of you submitted our formal responses with detailed answers to the budget analysis. There are a few items that we'd like to point out here, and of course we're available for any questions. Even during these very stressed economic times, the budget that you have before you continues to reflect our mission to provide leadership and support for our agricultural communities, which remains Maryland's #1 economic industry. We do understand and appreciate the challenges that your committee faces, and the budget before you, we would like to point out, is responsible. It's fiscally responsible. If I could just do some top-level numbering, the first is the total operating budget, $124.7 million. That's broken down by general funds, $45.5 million, special funds, $40.7 million, federal funds, $13.3, and reimbursable funds, $25.2. With respect to personnel and vacancies, we continue to be on the front line of reaching our numbers. We did have a couple of positions that were vacant. 6 positions were part of the voluntary separation program. The savings associated with those will be fully realized starting with the 27 budget. The budget also includes 8 new PINs. 7 of those PINs are for contractual conversions for long-term contractual positions in our forest pest management and plant protection and weed management programs. And 2 are for staffing the Maryland Market Money Program, which is now being run in-house at MDA. That was brought over from the Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, and it's a great program that helps to add money to some of the food security programs to help folks who go to farmers markets and other distribution points have more money to actually buy fresh local food. We were asked to address a number of recommendations as part of the analysis. The first I'll start with is LEAF, the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming program. This is a reboot of how we think about conservation at the Maryland Department of Agriculture. We have a number of programs currently within our department that run various elements of our conservation, and conservation, as Mr. Gray pointed out, does take the bulk of our funds. It is a major, major part. The top priority within the department is making sure that where we are growing food, growing agriculture, food, fiber, fuel, as responsibly as possible, responsibly in terms of how it affects the community and how it affects the Chesapeake Bay. We do respectfully disagree with the recommendation to level fund at $400,000 rather than the budgeted amount at $900,000. And that is because as the program starts up and as the advisory committee, which is as Mr. Gray pointed out, being formed and begins to meet, there will be this summer our first cohort of farms that enter the program. And we would hate to miss a year where we're able to make use of those funds to provide those conservation incentives. We detailed the progress of the LEAF program in our JCR report as well as in our written response. Under key observations, on page 12 regarding our March 2025 legislative audit, we do disagree, always respectfully, with the recommendation to restrict $100,000 from MDA's general operating expenditures until the submission of a report that details all of the steps to address our two repeat findings. I will note that when we met with the auditors, and of course in response to this analysis, we did provide what we believe is adequate information to show that we're making good progress on these findings. We have instituted the program changes that we've needed, and in the budget there is an additional pin to be for a procurement officer, which will help us very much as well. So a report on the report that we've submitted we feel is redundant. Lastly, I would like to discuss our new EVSE, Electric Vehicle Service Equipment program that we are rolling out. It has been delayed a bit as we've received more community and industry feedback. We feel like we're on a really good path right now to launch the program July 1. It is not one of the first in the nation. We are, I would say, within the first cohort of states that are going forward with EV charger inspections. When you think about that, this is an industry, these are products, these are services that as up to this point have not been regulated. As someone who is driving a state EV, I will tell you that many a times when I've showed up at a public charging station, I have found it to be inoperable in some respect. And so our program moves to fix that. And that's the top complaint that we hear from EV owners is, if I'm charging at home, that's one thing. But if I'm out and about and I need a charge, it can sometimes be quite a labor to find an operating EV charger. We are working with our partners at the Maryland Energy Administration to navigate how we might get some more SEEF funding, not just to purchase our upfront equipment, which is very expensive, the standards to test EV chargers as equipment, and then there will be vehicles that go along with that. But we're looking at how we can sustain this otherwise specially funded program year over year if we need to assess a fee, and if that initial fee from the community standpoint was seen as being too high. And so we're working to try to bring that fee down. We've got a plan. We're excited about it. The team's excited about it because we think in partnership with Maryland Energy Administration, we've got a good path forward to significantly reduce that fee and get our inspection team on the ground this summer. So I'm happy to answer any further questions about that. The goal will be to have 4 inspectors and 2 supervisory staff who have been trained out and about with that equipment starting this summer. Mr. Gray also announced or asked us to address the weights and measures truck, otherwise known as the heaviest truck on the roads. And that is, by design, it is the truck that calibrates the truck scales and all other scales. So you will, if you ever do encounter this truck, it is a truck loaded with weights with a crane on the back to move those weights on and off the truck to calibrate all the various truck scales you see on the side of roads, the truck scales that you see in commercial operation on farms, et cetera. It is a very specialized equipment. You do not go to the dealership and buy one, and it has reached, by a number of years, its end of life. So that is something that will need to be replaced. That's a very high overview, high-level overview. Happy to answer any questions that you may have Heather's available, as are our specialists from the various units. We do look forward to working with you collaboratively on this. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out.
Thank you, Secretary. I know that we do have some questions, and I think we'll begin with my introduction of the Appropriations Vice Chair who's joined us for this report, Delegate Ann Kaiser, and I'll give her the honor of beginning with the questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Secretary, and certainly unusual that I'm here with this subcommittee and not my own. But I wanted to, I guess, demonstrate how important it is that the committee really understands some of the concerns that we have. And so, Madam Chair, I do have 3 distinct questions, if I can take them one at a time.
Yes, you can.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Secretary, on to the key observations. So on page 10, where you're talking, well, from our perspective, page 10, on the LEAF program report, while the report finally did come in, as I understand it, we're still waiting for the final parameters. We're still waiting for the spending plan. And I heard the analysts today say that the program isn't ready for prime time. I know you're concerned about the potential cuts to the program, but when will this information be forthcoming, and will it be soon enough to help us make any of our decisions?
So I appreciate the question. As I've come to understand, when standing up a major program like this, it takes time, and it takes more time than I might like for it to take. And it's just because of the procedures. It took us a while to get our program manager position established, which was granted in last year's budget, and that individual has been hired. She's great. She was the one, Elizabeth Hoffman, who had been helping us with the formation foundation of the program. The other part that has taken us a while is this program has been of incredible interest to the conservation community. And so we started with some group meetings, meeting with the conservation groups, lead conservation voters, Shore Rivers, obviously Chesapeake Bay Foundation, et cetera. And we realized pretty quickly that each of these potential partners have a lot to offer and had a lot of really good suggestions, which have helped us up to this point make the program much, much richer. We are in the process, I'm just giving you a preview of it, but we're in the process of developing MOUs to actually engage formally with these conservation partners. And that's part of the overall agenda with this, or concept, and that is to rethink how we do conservation. So it's not just the department running its conservation programs, these groups running their conservation programs, some of it counting toward the Chesapeake Bay program and you know, the whole Watershed Act and all these various other things, and instead begin to comprehensively bring it all together so that it's all trackable, because no doubt our team will have questions about metrics and KPIs and results, and you will have questions. And so we want to make sure that everything is consolidated. In terms of when we will have we'll call it kind of the strategic plan going forward, we're hoping in the next couple of weeks, as the stakeholder group begins to get formed, we've seen names of who that will be, that will have a little more of a timeline. I can commit, and I don't know that it's going to fit directly the budget schedule, but I would say in the next 3 weeks, we'll have a little more of the timeline laid out for how this will launch. Summer, we'll launch a pilot program with a number of farms that we will essentially, with training wheels, see how the program works. And the hope being to get through one full growing season so that next summer it flips live for everybody.
All right, well, thank you. And when you say in 3 weeks, hopefully have more of that timeline, we'd love to see that as well. I'd next like to ask you about the cover crop program, and just have a better sense, as the analyst was talking about it not being sustainable, the costs from last year to this year and the concerns. And it sounds like in your letter that some of those issues have been solved. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, because obviously we're worried about any kind of overspending.
Sure. I will introduce Hans Schmidt from our Resource Conservation Unit, but first I will say that the cover crop, when it comes to conservation, is the single best bang for the buck that we have as a state. We have so many farmers engaged in it, whereas the other BMPs, it will be suitable to certain properties, certain types of farmers, et cetera. Cover crop, universally, best bang for the buck.
So for the record, I'm Hans Schmidt, Assistant Secretary for Resource Conservation. So during this period of time, typically every year, we're trying to set up the framework of the cover crop program, getting an idea of anticipating what the budget's going to be, any carryover funds and so forth, so we can decide what the base rate's going to be, what are the incentives going to be, and trying to stay within the budget. For FY25, we did have carryover funds that we knew we had that we could work with. And so in looking at not just what the available acres that could be planted to cover crops, but also anticipating and looking at what farmers may be looking to do, looking at what commodity prices are, trying to anticipate whether they're going to be planting small grains, wheat or barley or whatever in the fall, trying to take all these into consideration. This time of the year, it's a bit of a challenge. You need to really have a crystal ball. So we tried to set up a program. We did lower the base rate. We did lower some of the incentives, thinking that there were going to be more acres that were going to be planted. When we got into the sign up, we had a record number of acres that were signed up. When we got to the fall, commodity acres had basically crashed, and farmers were turning around and planting cover crops in lieu of planting wheat or barley for commodity markets. And so we had a lot of acres. It was record acres. For FY25, this was the year to do it because we were trying to meet our 2025 water quality Chesapeake Bay goals. So as the record shows, we spent $32 million. We used funding for, whether it was the funding from Bay Restoration, trust fund, carryover funds, and so forth. But we did meet the obligation that we had to meeting, our farmers' needs. Going into FY26, anticipating that we had less money to work with, we wanted to stay within our budget. We lowered our base rate. We changed some of the incentives. As it was probably said, as Mr. Gray said, we had to change some of those incentives where we took out aerial seeding and cover crop, or aerial seeding into soybeans, which I know from the ag community was not a popular thing to do. But for FY26, we anticipate we're going to probably be in that $20 million range, so just to make sure that we're staying in our budget. Our goal is to stay within our budget. But when we get into the fall, the farmers are going to do what the farmers can do. And when they look at what commodity prices are versus what they can do with cover crops, they're going to do one or the other. I know that was long-winded, sorry.
No, that was good. I was just trying to write down the last comment you made, but I do have my third question. What's that?
Oh, jump in.
Oh. I had a new third question, so if
I know,
someone
I'm
else
going
has
to get back to you.
follow-
No,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
I want to stay on
Good.
this question for a second. Just so we understand, you spent $32 million, and what did you project you were going to spend?
That's a good question.
And the analysts, you said they overspent, but do you know what they overspent by?
Well, that's the problem. It looks like some of the payments are probably going to have to be made in fiscal 2026.
I think what we anticipated was somewhere in the $26 million range. It was quite a bit less. The farmers really went out and planted a lot more acres than I think we had anticipated.
And
typically, when they sign up, in the summertime, we figure about 70% of the acres that they're going to sign up. But in this particular year, the percentage was a lot higher.
We're just trying to understand the math. So we're not at all disputing the good that the program does. So if you thought you would spend about 26 million and you spent 32 million, then where is the other 6 million coming from that you spent?
Well, we had, not only just the carryover funds, but we also were able to use, as Mr. Gray said, some federal dollars that we were able to use, and we were able to shift some trust fund around so that we can make those obligations. Plus, we believe we took in about $2 million or so from FY26, because when farmers came in to certify, to make those final payments, a lot of those certifications were not done until the very end of June and so forth. So by the time we did all the certifications and so forth, it was past July 1 before we made that final payment.
So there is no deficiency appropriation coming from this
No,
issue?
no.
Okay. So basically, you found the money in other places?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Secretary?
Just that we're happy to write it all down and send it to you, just so it's
That
all
would be
in one
great.
place.
Thank you for that. Madam Vice Chair, please continue.
Number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for my confusion there. Mr. Secretary, my last question is maybe my biggest one, but I was going in the order of how they were in the report. So I'm particularly concerned under the topic of the old audit findings not being resolved. And I heard what you said about some of the changes that you're making in staffing and process and
Yes.
now I lost where I wrote those notes, but making progress in a
Yes.
lot of different areas in that regard. But at the same time, finding 3 relates back to 2013. I was here back then.
Yeah.
I think you were around here back then as well. I was not here in 1990, and that's where the other audit finding has come from. So,
You were not born in 1990.
well, I actually worked here during the 92 session, Madam Chair, for Hank Heller, Delegate Heller. And I'd like to ask Mr. Secretary, not a surprising question in this regard. What's different this time in terms of, how can we believe you this time? Because maybe not you, but certainly your predecessors. We've been told many times. And also just to say, not to be surprised about budget language withholding funds. And as I read this, the suggestion from DLS, I think they're being generous with only suggesting 100,000. And that's just me. But I'd just like to hear what you'd have to say about these audit findings.
Well, I appreciate that, and yes, you've been at this work longer than I've been at this work, so I appreciate your perspective on it. I will ask Heather to talk about some of the structural changes that we've made, many of which were underway before the audit commenced. And one of those, just as an example, is how we inventory at the department. And this is not by no means an excuse, but more of an explanation of over the years, as the budget has been cut at a smaller agency, that very often had meant people. And so the person that was in charge of inventory was gone and had been gone for a bit of time, and whose name is mentioned every time we're looking for a chair or a computer or whatever it is. Their name is mentioned. So one of the things that we've done is brought someone in whose responsibility is inventory. And the other thing that we've done is to declassify what it is that we're tracking. The audit would tell you that we may not have been able to find every lamp, every chair, et cetera. Those don't really, in our mind, 20 years later, count really as equipment that needs to be formally inventoried. We're talking about sensitive equipment. And so we've narrowed our scope a bit, but I'll let Heather address that and some of the other findings.
Yes, so just for a little bit of context, so the audit period was from December 16th, 2019 to November 30th, 2023. I started with the department in October of 2023, and a month later, the auditors showed up. But I saw it as an opportunity to work with them because I was not new to state government, but I was new to MDA, is to use that opportunity to work with them to find out what they identified as points that need to be addressed. So we worked very positively and collaboratively with them, and as they started identifying things, we started working on resolving the issues, and one of them, was the inventory. I can't, because I was relatively new to MDA, I can't say why it dropped so far off and there were these repeat findings. All I can do is I can sort of pick it up and move it forward from this point. So there was a number of issues that were identified. The record keeping, like we're developing a comprehensive written capital inventory procedures manual. We're actively working on that. Probably I should back up a little bit. One of the first things we did is there was no director of central services for the department. And that's who runs the inventory. So that was one of the first things. It took a little bit to identify a PIN and figure out and then go through the recruitment process, but we did hire a new director of central services who started in January of 25. And I told him when he started, this is probably the biggest thing I'm gonna need you to work on from the outset. So we're working on record keeping with regard to the physical inventory. We met with DGS. We had them come in either April or May of last year, and we asked for them to do an audit and help us identify where our weak points were and what we needed, and we've been working very collaboratively with DGS now. So we've decided, like, we're going to complete the physical inventory, but we're going to have to do it from a point going forward. Like, we're not going to go back and try to find that desk chair on caster wheels from 1990. There's no point in trying to hunt down everything, but we're going to, as we identify things that will be recorded in the inventory, and then moving forward with the purchases, everything will get appropriately inventoried. We're working with DGS and also establishing a new baseline for what has to be inventoried, because obviously the value of something from 1990 is not the same as the value of something in 2026. Things are a lot more expensive now. And so we're establishing a new threshold for which actually needs to go on our inventory. So we're reconciling our records. We're reestablishing an internal work group of individuals who are tasked from each program who will assist us with the inventory. We have annual reporting requirements. We're doing that. So basically everything that DGS and DLS identified, we are actively working on fixing.
If I could follow up, I mostly heard you talking about finding 4 and not finding 3. And I guess I have a few questions. First, in terms of finding 4, are you prioritizing the sensitive materials over the other materials?
Yep.
And then that's okay, that's a good, simple question. And then you mentioned some work group being created. Has that been developed? Has the head of that been chosen?
Right, so the head of it is the Director of Central Services.
Okay.
And so we have sent out, we have said to everybody, okay, every program you need to identify who your inventory manager is, tell us what their name is, and then in mid to late April, we will have our first group meeting with them again to start the process of reinvigorating how this is supposed to actually occur according to the state laws and policies.
Thank you. Anything on finding 3?
So finding 3 had to do, that was our product registration. So we did somewhat, ultimately we agreed with this finding, but we didn't completely agree with it in that we had resolved probably 95% of this. It had to do with the product registration in our state chemist program, and the issue was having the same person assess the same, like, more than one step in the process. So they did not want the same person who received and reviewed the registration to be the same person who reviewed the label, to be the same person who entered the check data information, so on and so forth. We had bifurcated that. We had completely separated that except for 2 steps. The program manager was reviewing the labels, and then he was reviewing the entire package at the end. And that's what they had an issue with. Now, there was a slight issue also with the fiscal services side of that, of the same person reviewing the entry and then assessing that, yes, it's accurate. Again, it just had to do with staffing. They were so short-staffed in our fiscal services, there literally was they could not separate it out that far. So we have now, every step of the state chemist process is now separated out among, every step is a different person. And the last and final step is our assistant secretary. So our program manager for state chemists retired in January. So that was part of it too. We said, okay, we're separating it at this point. So we have a different person doing the labels, and Assistant Secretary Calkins is doing the final step in that process. We have rectified that on the fiscal side too.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to stay for 10 more minutes, but I might not be able to stay for the next budget hearing. Thank you.
And that's fine, and that's why we got you up first. Members, I know we have questions. What I would like to do at this point is to ask if you have any questions on the key observations section, which the Vice Chair talked about. That's page 10 through 16. So there were a couple of others in here, and you might have follow-up questions, I don't know. But first, can we ask, does anyone have any questions on the key observations while we're in that section? Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me just say that Vice Chair Kaiser asked many of the questions I was going to ask, but did so much more deftly than I would have. But I did want to ask, since we're talking about key observations, about the electric vehicle charger program. In particular, I wanted to ask what, if any, relationship there is between our program and federal funding for electric vehicle charger infrastructure. I'm not sure there is, but I just wanted to clarify because of news reports of the federal administration rolling back $5 billion in congressionally approved funding for EV charging infrastructure as part of the bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And just last month, in a lawsuit in Washington State, a federal judge ruled that the federal DOT cannot revoke previously approved funding plans for state EV charging infrastructure. So that's just the setup to the question, but I just wanted to ask, does this EVSE program rely on any of that federal funding?
My understanding is no, it does
We're not
not.
getting any, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'll follow up on that particular key observation and ask, so did I understand it correctly, for you to say that you were decreasing the registration fees?
Correct. As it stands right now, published for July 1, it is $150 per port. And we are in discussions with MEA right now about reducing that significantly. That's been a major flashpoint with the industry, is that for level 2 chargers, which are your standard charger, not the fast charger, there's not a lot of margin.
Okay, so are you, and that's fine, but which numbers are in the budget from a revenue perspective?
It's a good question.
So the money that we are receiving, the budget amendment has been processed, and it should be before the chairman. I'm not exactly sure when, but we've requested a budget amendment for FY '26, and then there will be a budget amendment for FY '27.
So are you decreasing the projected revenue amounts? Is that what you're doing in the amendment, or what are you doing?
So we are receiving additional funds as reimbursable funds from MEA, which then will offset the fees that we have to charge to the regulated community.
Okay, so you will be accounting for the change in fees, and we can expect a budget amendment?
Right, we'll have to do a regulatory change to change the fees.
Right,
Right.
okay. One other thing, if we go back to the cover crop program. So we had talked about the fact that you think the projected amount that you were going to spend was about 26 million, and you spent about 32 million, and you made up the difference without a deficiency appropriation. But when you made up that difference, which let's just call it $6 million, does that mean that there are other things that didn't get done? I mean, when you say you got the money from other areas, where did you get it from? Because $6 million's a decent chunk of change.
You know, after I said that, I think 26 may not be the right number. It's probably closer to 30 million, but still, it's a big number. I mean, the difference is still a big number. So we have, through our agreement with DNR, through the trust fund, we have allowances to move some funds around out of certain programs that are not going to be used for certain programs. So we had that ability to move some trust fund around to pay for that. But as I said too, is that there was some funding that to meet those obligations didn't come out until out of the FY26 funds to make up for the FY25 obligations.
These will, the team is putting the numbers together right now to give you the specifics as
Yeah,
to
just give us a flow
where it
chart.
came from. And
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yep.
We just want to understand, well, we did have a very nice briefing on environmental funds that is helping our understanding before the session started, but we want to understand exactly sort of how you're moving that money around. So that would be great if you could get that for us. Anything else on key observations before we move on to other sections? Yes, Delegate Mesker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I gleaned from wisdom, and Delegate Kaiser did a great job digging in. I just have two questions. One is somewhere the $450,000 vehicle. Could you explain what that is?
that is the heaviest vehicle that's on the road. That's our weights and measures vehicle. And it's the vehicle that we use to test the weight scales at both truck weigh stations and beyond. So it's a truck with a lot of weights and a crane to move those
So
weights
that's
on.
on the highways,
It's on our highways.
because I know that's very, very important.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The other part was, the question I have is, any reason why the reports were late or getting late or?
Yeah, and again, this is an explanation, not an excuse. We did have a staff change. Our legislative director went on maternity leave, and then as she was, and you will all remember Rachel Jones, as she was coming back, she made a decision to seek elected office and was moved out of the legislative position and into a policy position within the department. And in that transition, those reports got lost in the shuffle in one of those spots. As soon as it was identified that those reports were not in, we had cross-checked them and proofed them, and the other agencies in the governor's office had all looked at them in a timely manner, and we did not press send. And so that...
So are they up to date now?
They are, unless I'm told otherwise, all the reports are in.
We've sent them in. As soon as we realized what had happened, we sent them in.
And I'll go on the record to say, our problem, not Rachel Jones' problem. That was us not picking up where she left off.
So I'll also say it won't happen again?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Metzger. And back to Delegate Harrison.
I just wanted to, and we've talked about the cover crop program quite a bit, and that was, in going through this report, that was one of the areas that really concerned me because of how important it is. And so you had a great year, more farmers were taking advantage of it, so you had to kind of backfill that. Do you anticipate that to continue, the farmers to continue to take advantage of it? Is what you have the number that you think that you may have spent 30, whatever, do you think that you're going to continue to need that? Because there's a recommendation for a decrease, but obviously the program is taking off like gangbusters, and we need to, and it's probably one of the best things we can do for Chesapeake Bay and for that. And then that, to me, that ties into also the Healthy Soils program. I see them working together, although they may come from two different pots, because if we don't have good cover crops, and which goes to our good soil so that we can actually grow food to feed people, you got to have good soil in order to have good crops. And so what is your thinking as far as sustainability? Where do we go?
Well, you're right on the money there. I mean, cover crops are our most cost-effective measures of reducing nutrients to the Chesapeake Bay out of any best management practice farmers can do. It is the gold standard. It's the gold cover crop program amongst the nation. Nearly 50% of eligible acres across Maryland, excuse me, are planted into cover crops. It's the highest percentage of cover crops at any state in the country. It just seems that for FY25, the fall of FY25 was the perfect storm where commodity prices were low and farmers were looking to plant, still wanted to put those cover crops planted, so we had record acres of cover crops. This year, as knowing that, it was such a big year, we had to reach into FY26 to meet our obligations. We knew we had to tailor the program down. So we lowered our base payments, we lowered our incentives and so forth. We took out a couple of the incentives. This year, we're anticipating a $19 to $20 million program, so we can stay within our budget. And right now, we are reaching out to farmers. We're putting together a farmer cover crop work group to talk about this coming year and anticipating what kind of budget that we may have, but where it's a farmer's interest and so forth, because some of the changes that we made, farmers liked, some of them they didn't like, so we need to hear their input, because all these programs need to be built from the bottom up, from what works for farmers, what's practical for farmers, and what we can do. But again, it's not just looking at the environmental conditions, but it's also farmers are looking at commodity prices. And we're trying to anticipate right now what farmers are going to do in the fall, and then what we're going to have to be ended up paying out towards the end of the fiscal year. So it's connecting all those dots. But at this point right now, we anticipate that we will stay within our budget. It's our acres for this year are about 110,000 acres less than they were in 2025, which is considerably less, but it's still a popular program.
Thank you.
Delegate Spiegel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our committee has been directing a particular focus this year to agency budget deficiencies. So this is not, we're not picking on MDA here, but we're asking all of the agencies who come before us about deficiencies that we see in the DLS analysis. So on page 2 of the DLS analysis, there's a discussion of 2 deficiencies, and we've been asking agencies to explain to us why these types of items are not properly budgeted in the first place, or why they're not addressed through a budget amendment in the budget amendment process as opposed to just declaring a deficiency later on in the budget year. And in this case, I see a $500,000 deficiency for shortfall related to vacancy savings projections, and then another $55,000 deficiency related to equipment for a seed testing laboratory. And I was just wondering if you all could address the sort of process question of how do we try to ensure that we're properly budgeting for certain things instead of having these deficiencies year after year.
I might ask Jeff to come up, who might be able to explain this a little bit better than I can. But, there was a series of COLAs, there was a series of step increases. Our vacancy rate was very low last year. I don't know, Jeff, do you want to add anything else? I know we had a number of retirements where we had, when you have an employee retire, you have to pay them out for all of their accrued annual leave, basis 400 hours plus whatever they earned in that year.
Yeah, Jeff Fretwell. I work at Maryland Department of Agriculture. I'm the budget director. So both the things that Heather said definitely impacted the $500,000 deficiency request. We worked with DBM on that, and it was a combination of factors that necessitated us needing the additional $500,000, all related to personnel costs. There was a reduction, legislatively mandated reduction as part of last year's budget for general funds for personnel-related costs. We did make the reductions where we could make the reductions in fiscal year 26, but we're not able to capture all of our reductions, particularly because of our vacancy rate being where it is, and the VSP, Voluntary Service Protection Program reductions not being realized until fiscal year 27. So those factors have impacted our ability to meet the full reduction target that we have for personnel savings for fiscal year 26. So working with DBM, this was the amount that they felt was justified for us for fiscal 26 to be able to continue to meet our personnel costs. Where we could have savings, we've generated them, but these are additional costs that we still have that we can't find additional savings to meet.
So keep in mind, with the 6 VSPs that we had, most of those people were eligible to retire anyways. So we had to pay them out for all of their accrued leave. We had to pay them out the flat bonus. Plus, we had to pay them out for the years of service bonus. We're not going to see any savings from those. And then the PINs were abolished through the Board of Public Works, but we're not going to see any savings because we had to pay out so much money for those individuals to leave. There's going to be no savings for us this year.
Thank you. I think the goal here is for us to work with all the agencies, including yours, to try and see if we can find ways to better anticipate, what's going to be coming down the pike, and, include that in the budget up front. Obviously, things happen, we have to be able to respond, but I think philosophically, that's what the committee is trying to get at this year as we ask that question of the agency. So thank you.
Yeah, we do find ourselves in a little bit of a unique situation, is that, it's because MDA is such a wonderful place to work. Like, we do have a relatively low vacancy rate. And plus, I think it's just driven by the job market right now. People aren't, we see a lot of employees leave state government to go work for the feds, and that has suddenly come to an end. So we're not seeing the turnover. We're doing something a little bit more creative this year. Last year, we are under a hiring freeze. Last year, we were not. We did last year because we saw what was coming with all the COLAs and everything, that we started holding all of our positions vacant for 45 days before you could even begin the recruitment process. Now, we are under a hiring freeze, but for those positions that we know, some of them are mission critical. We can't go without a director of human resources, so we filled that position right away. But for those other ones, we're now holding them for 90 days. so that we more than meet our budgeted turnover.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And have you adjusted the turnover rate, or is the vacancy rate adjusted in the next budget, or?
It is. Last year it was around 4.8, and then this year it's 6.03, I think. So our vacancy rate has been adjusted for FY '27.
But it's gone up?
Our vacancy rate has gone up, so it's more, we have to hold positions vacant longer.
Okay. What about the 55,000 turf and seed program? You had to replace a vent hood system, and that wasn't in the budget, basically?
Right, so it has failed, and it's actually have been failing for quite some time. It is actually a worker safety issue for those inspectors who are looking at seeds that are coated and they off-gas, and then they have like a dusty powder to them to begin with, to have that vent hood operational for the safety of the workers.
And you didn't anticipate that last year when we did the budget? Okay. Would you, and we're asking all committees, would you provide us with just a one-pager on the two deficiency appropriations and the explanation of the same? That would be great.
Yeah, we kept the vent hood operational with
Duct tape.
bubble gum and duct tape for as long as we could, but.
Well, we appreciate that. At some point, you got to pull the trigger.
Right.
Okay, let's go to page 6, please. And Mr. Secretary, could you address how the revisions in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act are determined?
Interesting question.
Okay, I wasn't ready to talk about the BRFA today.
Well, there are, and you can, it's okay, because you can give us the information, but let us tell you what we're questioning or what we want to know.
Okay.
Create the outline for
Thank
us
you.
and we'll send it in.
So what we're trying to understand, first of all, is how these decisions are made. So in the BRFA, there are 4 items that are basically cut from your budget. And legislation has to be, language has to be changed because these were things that were mandated. Are these decisions that you recommend, or are these decisions that the administration recommends, or does the administration ask you, we need to cut some things, what types of things we should cut? How does that work?
It's a good question. I would say, and probably it's going to be best if we get back to you on the play-by-play of each of them, because it may be different depending. I can use, is native plants one?
Native plant.
So the native plant program is an example where our part of the native plant program, there's also a university part. Our part of the native program is about building a platform and promoting native plants. When the native plant program was first being developed, we had a new staff that was onboarding in our marketing program who had the capabilities to do these things without additional funding. And so we were able to employ talent that we had to conduct our part of the native plant program. And so that's one of the reasons why it has been there on the list in a tough year. And that's not with respect to the university side of the program, which I believe involves an extension staffer, University of Maryland extension staffer. But on our side of it, it's something that we can do comfortably, capably, without the additional funds. So that's just an example.
Am I incorrect to assume, though, that the BRFA is cutting that one extension agent?
It is, but that is out of the University of Maryland, not in our budget. Our budget is $100,000, and we've never hired that employee.
Even
yet-
though we saved that for you last year? We saved
sorry?
that position for you last year.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you remember talking about this last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a recommended cut, and we put it back in.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're saying you didn't hire the person?
No.
But we were able to, with an individual on staff, stand up the program.
Okay.
So there is a native plant promotion program within our department.
Right.
Okay. How about, we also had a discussion last year about the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland and the funding that goes to that organization. If you don't know off the top of your head, you could get back to us about the impact of that recommended cut and how it came about. Same with the Maryland Healthy Soils Program and the Urban Agricultural Water and Power Grant. I guess what we're asking you is, are you agreeing with these cuts? Is this something that you have recommended that they cut. Sometimes the administration will say, hey, we've got to cut something from your budget. Can you find some things for us? And then you work to find the least harmful things, and you give them to cut. Is that what this is, or is this something else?
Well, with the urban ag and with the healthy soils, with both of those are sort of pass-through grant funding, and we'll have a reduced amount. We'll still be giving out grants, but just not as many, or at a higher, we'll reduce the amount that's given out to folks.
Understood. But, go ahead.
I was just going to request, if possible, can we get back to you with all the other information?
Yeah.
We're happy to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Members, did we cover everything? Oh, we have Delegate Harrison.
I just had one question as it related to, that I put a note down for the Tri-County Council. So the funding that went to them came from the Cigarette Restitution Fund to help those farmers in the southern, in those particular counties to transition from tobacco to other
Yes.
forms of agriculture. Has that been done? Have they transitioned? Is there really still a need for the CRF funds to go there for this reason?
I'll say two things. I'll answer that in two parts. The first part is, have they been successful? It's been very, very successful. The reason we have a Southern Maryland wine industry is because a lot of those funds were dedicated to promoting grape growing as an alternative high-value crop to tobacco. And so the proof is in the bottle, so to speak, on their success. I will say, in terms of a regional development commission, SMATIC, it's a Southern Maryland Ag Development Commission, is almost alone in their successes in what they've been able to develop, their ongoing programs, their ongoing grants and educational programs. And so we spend a lot of time internally trying to figure out if there were a way to replicate the work that they are doing at a statewide level. And I know that other regions ask us and ask SMATIC all the time for the playbook. Give us the playbook so that we know how to do this same thing. So have they been effective? Definitely. Is there still a need for it? From our perspective, the answer would be yes.
Do you think that that's an ongoing request?
Well,
It seems like it was never meant to be an ongoing appropriation, a forever appropriation to come out of that. Am I incorrect or correct?
Well, I can't speak to that. I was not around when that first deal was made. I know that in other places where there have been, we'll colloquially call it a tobacco buyout, there have been longstanding, if not permanent, programs that were established with that money. And I can't speak to where the rest of the funds go and what percentage of the funds go toward this program versus other programs.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Spiegel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the Enforcement and Inspection Position Strength Report. In MDA's response to the agency, you mentioned that it's actually a joint report submitted by MDA and MDE, and that MDA had actually already submitted its portion of the report to MDE. Do you have any update? I know you're not MDE, but do you have any update on what the status of that report is and whether MDE has done anything since then?
Thank you. Notably not MDE, but happy to be a partner agency with MDE. Do we know the status of?
I believe they've submitted it at this point, but we can go back and double check where
Hans has confirmation.
Okay,
It has been submitted, yes.
great, thank you.
Members, any other questions for the Department of Agriculture? We thank you all for being here, and when we can expect some of the outstanding items within, by Wednesday?
Given the electronic chatter, I think it's already underway.
Good. Thank you so much. We appreciate the extra work you're going to put in, but we do think it's important as we're trying to be very diligent in making sure that we can explain some of the issues in this report, but also in others too.
I appreciate that this is all part of the collaboration I solicited at the beginning. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Canal Place. and we will be starting with our, oh, sorry, we're not going to move on to Canal Place until we have Department of Agriculture people here to testify. So I apologize for that. We do have, let me read the names, and if you are here, come forward, please. We have Kristen Harbison, and then we have Matt Stegman, and then we have Janet Rule, and finally we have Charlotte Davis. Thank you for being here, and you can go ahead and go, Ms. Harbison.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm Kristen Harbison, Political Director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and we are here to urge this committee to accept Governor Moore's proposed operating budget for the Department of Agriculture without making any further reductions. We urge you to pass a budget that recognizes the essential value of our state's natural resources, responsibly protects and enhances Maryland's natural places, invests in climate resilience and clean energy, and ensures appropriate staffing for the state agencies. You're used to seeing me to talk about energy. But I'm here because agriculture is one of Maryland's leading energy sectors. But agriculture is also part of our clean energy and clean environment future. Investments in healthy soil, clean water, and clean air are investments in Maryland's economy and quality of life. Protecting air and water promotes public health, saves lives, and reduces the economic stress of families. And to achieve these goals, Maryland must fund the Department of Agriculture and the programs that support them. That they support. And so we ask that you provide at least level funding for the Maryland Department of Agriculture and the programs that it manages. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Matt Stegman, Maryland staff attorney with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I would say me too to everything that Ms. Harbison said, and would just add that as it regards the LEAF program, we at CBF we've appreciated as both a conservation organization, but also an organization that does run a farm in Prince George's County, the ability to offer many rounds of feedback and to really have an agency staff that's been very accessible as they look to stand up that program. I think we agree with the committee that we would love if that program was fully up and running right now, but we really do appreciate the deliberate approach that the agency has taken to make sure that it's that the incentives are things that are actually going to be meaningful and impactful to farmers, but also meaningful and impactful from a conservation standpoint. So with that, we would ask you to please support the budget as submitted by the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you both for all the work that you do in the community to support the Department of Agriculture.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Do we have Janet Rule or Charlotte Davis with us?
Hi there. Charlotte Davis, Executive Director of the Rural Maryland Council. I thought I'd signed up just written only, but I'm happy to be here in support of the governor's budget appropriation for the Rural Maryland Council and the Maryland Department of Agriculture. I dropped off earlier today to your offices a copy of our fiscal year 2025 annual report. And really, I'm just here to answer any questions.
Fantastic.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. And do we have Charlotte Davis here?
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Janet Rule. Janet Rule. Okay. So that concludes our hearing for the Department of Agriculture. Thank you all for being with us for the last hour. Not bad. Not bad. All right. And now we have Canal Place, and we have Elizabeth Weibel, who will be, or is it Weibel? Weibel, who will be reviewing the legislative analysis, and of course, you can come forward to the members of the Canal Place team. And go ahead, Ms. Weibel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The fiscal 2027 allowance for the Canal Place Preservation and Development Authority is about $916,000. It decreases from the prior year by $300,000, primarily due to one-time reimbursable funding that was provided for an engineering and planning contract related to the planned River Park project. The budget bill includes about $14,000 in deficiencies for janitorial and maintenance costs, as shown on page 2. There are also PAYGO deficiencies of $1.2 million in general funds and $6 million in reimbursable funds to replace funds that were reverted in error at the end of fiscal 2025. Those PAYGO funds are not shown in the operating analysis, but they will be used for River Park. Exhibit 1 on page 3 shows a breakdown of the 2027 allowance. There are 4 full-time personnel, and personnel costs make about half the agency's budget. Facility maintenance for the park area, parking lots, and historic buildings that CPPDA manages is about 28% of the allowance. The rent and parking charges for those facilities also bring in some revenue for the agency, making its budget more than 2/3 special funds. The agency also receives $25,000 annually, which it distributes to grantees within the passages of the Western Potomac Heritage Area. Key observations begin on page 5. The big news is that the River Park project has been added to the CIP. There's funding for removing an old dam and sediment buildup, which is planned to begin in fiscal 2031. Before that part of the project takes place, the agency will, over the next couple of years, be working to expend its PAYGO and federal funds to develop a new trail system along the river in Cumberland, as well as additional parking areas for visitors. The agency is also seeking federal funding to start testing sediment that is built up behind the dam to see if it has any industrial contaminants or anything else that might need remediation before the dam is taken out. The eventual plan is to have a really nice park system with trails, boating access points, some whitewater features, and lots of recreational opportunities down on the waterfront there. And the agency is in discussions with the City of Cumberland and other local agencies in hopes that they will be able to handle the ongoing operating costs once all of this is built. DLS recommendation is to concur on page 7, and with that, I can take any questions you have.
Very good. And who do we have here from Canal Place? We have Deirdre Ritchie. And
Hi, and thank you for having us here. Yes, my name's Deirdre Ritchie, and I'm the Executive Director of Canal Place and the passages of the Western Potomac Heritage Area. And go ahead.
And I'm Kim Folk, the Marketing and Media Director for Passages and Canal Place.
great, thanks for being here. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, again, thank you all. We concur with the budget analysis and the appropriation, and I'm just here to give you a quick update on some of the things Canal Place has been working on. As you know, we're a state agency that has 11 acres in facilities, but we're also the Heritage Area Director. And right now, our Heritage Area is 1.67 square miles, and we're expanding it to include all of Allegheny County, which will be over 300 plus square miles. So that's going to be great for Allegheny County. As you know, the heritage areas have a tremendous economic impact, so it'll be another positive thing for Allegheny County. The other thing I wanted to say is the River Park project. You know, I know every time I come down here I talk about it, but it's a game changer for Allegheny County, and it is a partnership between the state and the City of Cumberland and Allegheny County Commissioners. It's a priority because it's going to help us tremendously with economic growth. It's supposed to generate over $40 million in state and local taxes, and that's a big deal, bring in over 1 million visitors. And we are underway with engineering and design, and we're going to start construction. It'll go out to bid this September, but we're going to start construction probably in early spring. They're all ADA accessible trails. There'll be access to the river, which hasn't happened in Cumberland, not really legal public access, so we'll have all that. We already have funding for the sediment testing. So they have that, the capital budget folks have that included in the 2031 ask and kind of lumped in with the dam removal. But we received generously from a federal earmark from Senator Van Hollen and Senator Osa Brooks and April Delaney, Congressman. So we received $500,000 for sediment testing, and we're just waiting for approval for a $700,000 ARC grant. And that's being matched by Allegheny County and the City of Cumberland, who have poured in hundreds of thousands of dollars into this project because it's such a big deal. I'm just hoping we don't have to wait until 2031 to start the dam removal process. I mean, I anticipate construction of those trails to be done no later than 2029, and the dam removal, sediment testing part of the dam removal, that can be done by the end of this year, 2026. I was hoping somewhere we could find funding to start the engineering and design of the dam removal, so I mean, this project is huge for us, and to sit idle for 3 or 4 years is not good. And we have already, it's a $30 million project. We've already generated over $9 million in federal and state funding. We continue to pursue funding. The only issue we're having now with the dam removal is all the federal funding is like priority funding for fish passage, and we don't have the right fish species in the North Branch of the Potomac. We have the American eel, but apparently shad is a big deal. We don't have that. And so every time we go for funding, because that's not a priority fish, we always get turned down. So that's why we're trying to go after capital budget money in case we can't find funding anywhere else. So I hope you look, favorably on trying to help us with that. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much for that information. Do we have questions? Yes, Delegate Spiegel and then Delegate Metzger.
Thank you so much for your presentation and update, and thanks for the work you all do. As you may know, we, as a committee, the Appropriations Committee, took a site visit up to Cumberland and Allegheny County a few months ago to really make sure that we understand the challenges and benefits of projects like this. I wanted to ask the projected benefit, the numbers, 1 million visitors, 2,900 jobs, $40 million in state and local taxes, all projected to be generated as a result of the River Park investment. Can you just give us a sense of sort of where those numbers come from? Do you have economic development analyses that have reached those conclusions?
Well, first, thank you for reading that. I really appreciate it. But yes, before I even started to ask for state funding, I've been with state government long enough to know that we need to have like facts before we ask, well, we should have facts before we ask for state money. We did have an economic impact study done, and that's what it came back predicting. And I truly believe it because Ohiopyle, which is about an hour up the road from us, that is way back in the middle of nowhere, that has hardly any of the amenities that we have, that generate like 2 million people visit that every year for the whitewater aspect and for the trails. My gosh, we got all that right in the city of Cumberland. So I absolutely do believe that those numbers are accurate.
No, I have no doubt that they're accurate.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask,
Yep.
how you studied and got them. And if you all don't mind forwarding us that economic impact analysis, if you
Absolutely.
have it, I'd just love to take a look at it. But no question as to the validity. I'm just curious as to the methodology.
Yeah, no, again, I appreciate you reading and asking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions have been asked and answered by I got them circled right there, that I was going to ask the exact same question. But I will tell you that I certainly enjoyed our trip to Cumberland and family that I've got up there and so forth. And I think Cumberland is on the way on a real putting itself back on the map. We was up there the day of the wind. Remember the wind? It was blowing pretty cold.
Well, that's all the time.
Yeah.
That
Well,
never stops.
I'm looking forward to the, by Delegate Heinball giving us the snow report. So I know you, but anyway, thank you so much for asking the questions that I was going to ask. Yes. Matt, you have a great committee, ma'am. I want you to know that.
I know that. Okay. I think we are complete with the hearing. We appreciate you being here and giving us the updates every year. And we did want to mention one thing about the financial statements. And can you give us an update on where we are on that? The audits, the annual audits of the financial statements are required, and it notes that that hasn't been done for particular years.
Well, here's what's going on. We just finished the 22-23 audit. They're done. And we've already put 24 and 25 out to bid. And so it's all being worked on right now. We're looking for some final numbers and 22, 23, we got them, and then we haven't heard back from the auditor, so that's where
Okay.
we are.
So you anticipate having all of this cleared up by the next time you're here?
Absolutely,
Okay. That's what we
absolutely.
like to hear. Thank you very much for being here today. And committee members, we're going to stick around for a vote, but that is the end of the budget hearing. Thank you.
Okay, where do you want me to send the economic impact study to? You're going to get it? Okay, great, thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Safe travels.